session, a Monday 5 p.m. session, which uh, spoke about all these levels. So what have we done in the month of August? So what I'll do is I'll just focus on this month and we'll enlarge the chart to what we have done in this month. I'll just keep aside today's profile because that is not merged as of now. And if I split this profile, you can see how the start of the month was a bearish one. Why? Because we were way below this value and below the rollover point. In fact, we left a failed auction on the first day of the month at 24784. So that is the reason the PLR was to the downside. But what we did on the downside was this HVN was holding and we formed similar lows. So similar lows here on the monthly profile is showing us exhaustion. From here, what we did, we started to form a balance. It looked as if it is going higher to get some sellers and then it will repair these poor lows. But what happened instead was, because of a news flow over the weekend, we got this big gap up. So this gap up changed the structure of the monthly profile, which was looking for a move lower away from previous value. We took support right at the rollover point. So that is the reason we give the rollover point so much of importance. We are bearish below the rollover point and bullish above the rollover point. So you can see how once we were above the rollover point, the auction went higher to test the first objective, which was the series VWAP. And right at that series VWAP, you see we have left a rejection. Why is this a rejection? Because we have a responsive selling tail. So the series VWAP was showing us supply coming back. And from there, what have we done? We made a big probe lower on Friday and we came back to the rollover point. So the rollover point was our reference for today also. And on the monthly time frame, what we are doing in Nifty spot is, you can call this a double distribution profile also, because we have got a DD zone here. The gap zone is not yet been filled. So this is a zone where there has been no auction at all in this month. So 24784 to the lows of the last Monday, which was at 24852. So that is the DD zone of this monthly profile. But setup wise in market profile, this is also a neutral extreme profile to the upside. Why? Because we formed an initial balance for the first uh, 4 days, and then we broke below those lows and we have also broken above the highs. So it is so this zone is our support zone for the days going forward, 22784 to 24852. So if we break this zone, then we are looking for a move back to into this balance which we were forming in the first half of this month. And then on the upside, what would be the reference? We will again have to take off this series VWAP. Then we are looking for a test of this extension handle from last month, which is at 25331. So that will be one important objective in case we get some buying seen tomorrow and then the session after the holiday, which will be the expiry day. So that is how we are placed on spot, and it is very important to be aware about what the references on the higher time frame are, because the monthly close would be very much in sync with these references. You can see already how we took support at one of the earlier monthly reference which we had marked, and then we are now taking support at the rollover point, and we have got rejection at this series VWAP. So this is how you can get those swing trades of 3-4 sessions, or maybe at 200-300 points in Nifty. If you can make out what the market profile is doing at important references and accordingly position yourself in a trade. So this is as far as the Nifty spot is concerned. So for now, it's a neutral extreme to the upside. And we'll come to the Bank Nifty spot chart and we'll see how Bank Nifty has been a different beast this month. So what have we done in Bank Nifty? You can see we have formed a nice balanced profile for the month. Yes, we are below the rollover point. So the PLR was to the downside at the start of the month, but it has not been a trend down month. And what have we done? We have taken support at this very important reference, the VWAP from May. This May profile was a neutral extreme one to the upside. And this POC of May was defended with a buying tail, which got broken this month, and we also got accepted below this VPOC. But what we have done is we have got buying support at this 55019 VWAP from May. So hence we are forming a nice Gaussian curve. So this is a very good marker for the next month, because we are talking about monthly profiles here. We had seen how the May month was a narrow balance, although it was a neutral extreme, and how we got a move away from this value to the upside in June. Same thing we can expect in the month of September. Of course, we have 3 more sessions left for this calendar month. So once we are done with the month of August, and as we have seen in the past, September has been mostly a big range month in Bank Nifty. So this kind of a profile, when you're seeing on a monthly, you need to be very, very alert for the month of September, because a balance will lead to an imbalance. So September could give you a big range in Bank Nifty. August was a very narrow range one in Bank Nifty with lower volumes on a daily basis and two-way moves most of the time. But September could be a different beast. So what is the references we have for the Bank Nifty spot? So Bank Nifty, again, as we saw, we opened below the rollover point, well below the rollover point actually, and we had left as initiative selling tail on the monthly, and we continued to make lower lows for the first 5 sessions, and then we stalled when we hit this VWAP of 55019. So you can see how multiple days we broke below that, but we could not get any sell side reference there. So that's the reason we came back a bit higher, and we were more, it was looking as if we were forming a B shape kind of a profile, which is a long liquidation. But then the gap up last Monday took us back to the rollover point, and you can see how right at the rollover point we got stalled. So you can see how both in Nifty and Bank Nifty, the level which we had marked right at the start of the month of August, how importantly it played out for the entire month. And it is expected to remain important for the remaining sessions of this month. That is the reason we have this top to bottom approach, and we have the monthly report which goes out as soon as a new series is starting. So if we were looking to be bullish in Bank Nifty after the gap up, we needed to cross this rollover point, which did not happen. In Nifty, we did cross the rollover point. That is the reason it is explaining why the Nifty is a monthly profile has extended to the upside, but Bank Nifty, why it is extending to the downside. So what we did, we made a brief lookup about this highs, got rejected, and we have come back to the value area low of the month. Because it's a nice balanced value area, we will need some fresh sell side initiative selling at this value area low, and the value area low is not surprisingly coinciding with our earlier important reference on the monthly time frame. So today's C side which we have made, you can see how the C side was just above that reference of 55019. So this is how we track these higher time frame levels, and we make note of them on the daily time frame when it is approaching, and see what the auction does when it gets there. These are not blind buy or sell levels, but we need to be aware about what the latest auction is doing when it gets there. So if this small seaside extension is holding the lows and tomorrow we get above this, we can look for more upside, and we can look for a tag of this value area high. We have discussed in the past how in Bank Nifty last month itself, we formed multiple 80% rules in the developing monthly value. We had 3-4 sessions where we did the monthly value 80% rule in this monthly value. So the same kind of setup is there in this month's value also. As long as we remain in this zone, we can look for the 80% rule to play out. You can already see why today's low was right where the monthly value area low was. and we have stalled right where the POC of the month is. So these are the important references you need to mark out on the monthly. And if we get about this POC tomorrow, we are looking for a test of this. And then on the upside, we have this rollover point and the rejection which we have got last week. So this is how we are placed in spot in Bank Nifty, and we will need to be aware about what is happening for the rest of this expiry, so that we can make sense of what happens on the expiry day. It does not come as a surprise that the Bank Nifty spot has selected one particular level to close. It will definitely, the monthly chart will definitely give out those references where it is likely to uh, close and where it is likely to reject or get accepted. So that's what we need to see. Because Bank Nifty is in a balance, there's a very good chance of this monthly profile closing at this 55355. And this is not just this month's POC. You can see it was also the monthly POC of April and May. In fact, the yearly POC of 2025 is also right there, because we have spent the maximum amount of time at 55355 in Bank Nifty spot for this year. So this is something which both the buyers and sellers have accepted. So we will need a definite move away from this for a imbalance and a good big range trade in Bank Nifty spot. So this is how we are placed in the Bank Nifty. Let's now move on to the another higher time frame chart, but this time it is the weekly series. And weekly series we have discussed last week also, how we take it on the basis of the weekly settlement. So the Nifty futures weekly settlement till this month end is from Friday to Thursday. So hence we have this weekly series uh, chart up. And why we have this weekly series chart is because we need to see what the Nifty futures is doing on the settlement cycle. So you can see how last week's profile chart of the weekly series is from 18th August to 21st August, because Friday was a holiday. So otherwise it would have started from 15th August to 21st August. But Friday being a holiday, the weekly profile started from Monday and it went on till Thursday. So what we did in this was a gap up open and we probed higher. This was a normal variation profile to the upside. But what we had done was we took support at the rollover point, but we stalled right below this weekly VPOC. So just like how I showed you references on the monthly time frame, giving us objectives and giving us zones where the auction is rejecting, hence it is telling us that now the direction can change. So similarly in the weekly also, you can see how when we stalled just below this POC, you knew that the upside was capped for the week. And then from there, we went on to make a probe lower and close around the value area high. So because this was a normal variation week to the upside, last Friday when we started a new weekly settlement, which is the final weekly settlement of August, this VWAP was an important reference, which was at 25041. And then we had this POC at 24986. So what we did on Friday was we left an initiative selling tail. Because this was a nice balanced value, we did the 80% rule here. And you can see how we swiped through this VWAP and got a selling tail here at the POC, weekly POC. Hence, the PLR remained to the downside and we spiked lower into the close. But very important thing which we saw was the POC shifting to the bottom. And on Friday in order flow, we saw huge reds. The cot was as red as you could get in any of the days this series. Hence, we knew that the sellers were in full force. And that is the reason they didn't let it go above VWAP on Friday. And in this spike lower, we saw all those sellers who had gotten book profit. And the proof of that was the POC shifting to the lows. And that is the reason today's higher open was not a surprise in Nifty futures, because it was already seen that the sellers are booking. So that's the reason we opened higher. And you can see how a probe to break the initial balance was rejected with a typical seaside extension. And then we got a failed auction, which is confirmed at the lows. The lows today is 24914. And to just I'll just come to the daily chart and I'll show you why exactly today's FA has more importance. And what we did was we got into this selling tail, but we could not extend in the K. K period is a very important TPO if you want that closing move which the structure is showing you. So today's structure was showing us a neutral extreme setup, but the K period did not give us any confirmation. So that is the reason we ended it more like a neutral center. And you can see we call C and J as cousins. And you can see how they have marked the bottom and the top today, and both of them gave us a fake breakout. So those would be the references for tomorrow in futures. I'll come to the daily chart in a and we'll talk about these references in the daily chart. So what do we do when we uh, follow the weekly series? Just like what we do on the monthly and the daily, we want to take the POC reference and the VWAP reference. VWAP reference will be taken when it is a buy side or a sell side dominated week. So last week was a buy side because we had made an extension to the upside. Hence the VWAP is important. And you can see how the VWAP was the place where we stalled on the upside today. And tomorrow also, in fact, for the expiry day also, this 25041 would be an important reference. If we get about this and we get order flow greens, then we can look for maybe a revisit of this 25188. So let's now get to the daily and have a quick look at the daily market profile chart and then the order flow. So this is the daily market profile chart in Nifty futures. And this was that gap up and how we made a 2-day balance after the gap up, and then we got this initiative move away from this value. And after this happened, what we saw on 21st was a very narrow range day. We call this as an island profile on in market profile. Why is it an island profile? Because it forms higher value, but the next day it gets rejected. So we the value is in gaps. There is a small gap between this value area and there is a gap between this value area. So what did this profile tell us on 21st, which was the weekly settlement, was that the upside is getting capped because we had a good move in the initial balance, but we could not extend higher. We made a typical seaside and we made a marginal new high in the K period, but we were not able to take off this POC, which is also the weekly POC which we saw. So from here, we got this open drive down from this POC and we have broken below these lows, but you can see how this rollover point is holding. And you also have the anchored VWAP from 30th of June, which was the swing high, coinciding right at that rollover point. So you can see how these levels will converge and they will give you added confirmation that yes, this is an important level. And what we need to do is we need to wait for the order flow to show us uh, its cards and accordingly look to trade in that direction. So what have we done today? Let us just, so we opened in range. This was an open auction in range. And we could not take off this selling tail at the open. So what we did, we probe lower. We made this typical seaside extension, which got rejected. We did not tag this POC at all. And this, I wanted to show you how the lows today, what the importance of the lows today was. And you can see the lows today came right at that spike close of Friday. This. So this spike was getting rejected. That is why we got a higher open and the seaside also stalled right at that place. So this is what market profile tells you. It gives you the perfect queue where it is getting rejected, where it is getting accepted. And what happened is we took time because it is negotiating this big initiative selling tail. We had seen a lot of supply coming in here. That is the reason it is stalling here. And we already discussed how this 25041, the weekly VWAP, is an important reference. And we stalled right just below that today. So on the daily, we have formed higher value. So we will have to, and we have closed right at this POC. So today is a neutral center profile. It has a good chance of giving us a move away tomorrow. What will be the references? We will need to stay above this initial balance high of today for this failed auction to be in play. And from the failed auction of today, which is at 24914, our 180R target comes to 25097, which is around this level. And then we can look for a tag of this VWAP, which we have not tagged, which we have left with a gap down, and this VPOC of 25164 and 25188. So these are the levels which we can look for on the upside in Nifty futures tomorrow and also on the expiry day. We will have to then revise the expiry day levels as per what happens tomorrow. So we will have to uh, check on that. On the downside, what will be the reference? Today's FA would be a very important level for the remaining two sessions of this expiry. And we have a very clear and simple rule for the FA. Below the FA, we are bearish. Above the FA, we are bullish. So what we need to do in order flow, we need to see IB signals above this FA to take fresh long positions. And the same IB signals we will need to get at this 25051, 25041. And on the downside, we will need to get IS signals below this FA. And then we'll have to get another IS signal at the 24860 level. So this is what we need to look out for in the order flow and accordingly look to trade the settlement. So what are the other things which will help us to trade the expiry? Definitely the first thing and the most important thing would be the order flow chart. So let me just put up an order flow chart of the 30 minutes and let us just have a quick look of what we have done in the last two sessions. I'll just quickly go back to the open of Friday, and you can so clearly see here the open was lower below, and you can see you have absolutely no demand, and you can see only reds, aggressive reds piling in on the first 30 minutes. In fact, this entire zone has got a bunch of reds. So and these reds were coming where? Right at the 25041. We already had that weekly VWAP marked, and at the weekly series VWAP, when you're getting these kind of reds, your uh, direction of trade has to be to the downside. So that is the order flow which was shouting at us on Friday that you need to go short, and the PLR was to the downside. In fact, this VWAP would have been our stop loss to hold on to shorts, and you can see how even though we were making RBs, the range extensions were coming in the first 5 TPOs. And what we did later was, because this stalled, and you can see that important low of today, it is stalling right at this 24916 level. And you can see how this pause below the VWAP and the failure to extend lower in these TPOs gave us a small bounce. Where did the bounce stall? Right at the VWAP. And you can see in order flow, we have got an RS bar, and the VWAP has got rejected along with this POC also. So that is the reason we got these new lows in the KP rate. And then what did we do? Those new lows saw big profit booking coming in by the sellers. How can we tell that? We'll come to that. So we have the COT, which tells us whether the sellers are dominating or the buyers. So you can see how the COT of the first bar was 7,000 contracts, and the COT remained red for the initial few TPOs, but the number started to decrease, and then it remained red. Some greens came in this bounce to VWAP, which was telling us some laggard shots were being forced to cover. The stop loss was being hit. But you can see in the TPO which made the new lows. You can see how you have good greens in this. And the greens were so big that the POC also shifted right to the lows. So this is a classic case where order flow is showing us that where the initial initiative party got in and how the initiative party is where the initiative party is booking profits. So the caught and the drive and the move away from balance to imbalance is all coming to a perfect end here. So if you are short, this POC shifting to the lows is a signal that you need to book out of shorts and you need to wait for a fresh sell side signal in the next open to take a short side trade. So that is the reason today's higher open was not a surprise, because we had seen the POC shift lower. So let's now come to what has happened today. So this is the 30-minute order flow chart of today, where you can see how the cot was relatively green today, but we remained in a range, but well above the previous day's range in the POC. So what has happened here in the C side? This is a typical C side where we have got zeros on the buy side and we make marginal new lows and immediately get rejected back into the initial balance. And then you can see how we have got back above VWAP. Once we got back above VWAP, the VWAP was being defended. We made higher highs. So the PLR was higher, but then we saw some big LLTs coming in, and these LLTs are expected all of this week because we are in the expiry week. So make sure you have an order flow chart of the September series also open, so that whenever you see a big LLT in the August series, you quickly just go to the September chart and mark whether it is also present there. Because most of the greens which were here, we saw a red rollover in the September series. So then you know that these are rolls and you need to, you cannot take them as generally you take LLTs, because if you are in a series and you get an LLT, you know that the LLT can give you a good move. But when it is an expiry week, when there are rolls coming in, you know that the big players are just creating positions for the next month. So they are not looking for a quick move on the day. It is more that they are making their base for the September series. So they will add in futures, maybe shorts or longs at whatever levels they have decided. And they will also get into option positions for the uh, coming series to balance their inventory. So that is the reason we will have to be doubly sure when we see LLTs coming in, because you can see this big red 3597. We had couple of them in the August series, but in the September we saw one of the reds covering. So what we need to see in order flow in the coming two sessions is IBs and IS. If we are getting IBs or IS, then we know that we are getting a trending move into the expiry. If we are getting order flow which is in a range, then we know that we cannot expect too much of a big range in the expiry. I'll come to the other uh, charts which we have, other tools which we have, which will give us the exact levels which we need to monitor in a bit. But order flow will tell us when the range can expand, when the range does not have much chance of expanding. So just like today's chart, we didn't have any IBs or IB30s or IS30s. That is the reason we remained in a narrow range. Although structure wise it was a neutral day, we did not get a big range. So if the same thing, if we would have got some buying in K, then we could have got a neutral extreme profile to the upside and a bigger range for the day. So this is what the 30-minute order flow of August is showing us. So we will need to see how we play out at this 24970, because this is the base from where we probed higher, and in the dip we have taken support right at that place. So this NPOC would be the important support for tomorrow. And then, as we have already discussed, the failed auction point of 24914 would be the other lower important support. If we get IS signals over here, then we are looking for a test of 24860, and below that we can go for a test of lower references. So a quick look at the September series of Nifty. So that's what I was telling you, that whenever you're looking at LLTs, make sure you mark them on the next series. So you can see how this 3800 was read in both August and September. But here you can see that one covering over here. So this is how, and you can see those greens which we saw in the August were mostly red rollover points. And here we can see some greens coming in. So make sure for this entire week you make a note of all LLTs which come in August and match them with what is happening in the September series, so that you only make note of the important references, the LLTs which have not been there in the September series, because those will be the ones which you will have to track and see if they are doing a good job, and accordingly what would be our objectives for that. So let me now come to the next part. Okay, a quick look at what we are doing in Bank Nifty daily before we get on to the gamma density chart, where it is very important for us to see what the range for this settlement can be and how things will be changing. So what have we done in Bank Nifty? So it is very important to know market profile. That is the reason we follow, because we want to see where the market is moving away from a balance and where what it is doing when it enters into a previous balance. So this open on Friday was a very good cue that the auction is getting into imbalance mode, because it was moving away from this 4-day balance which we were forming last week. And similar to this 4-day balance, we had a weekly 4-day balance in the week 11th to 14th. So what did it do? You can see so clearly, once it got into this value, it never came back above it, and it completed the 80% rule. It took a pause. We made a seaside right at this low of the value area, low of that composite, and then we later took that out with an extension handle and went on to make new lows. But then again, just like we saw in Nifty, we saw an HVN forming at the lows. So that was our opening reference for today. And we have this buying tail in Bank Nifty right below this. So you can see this is the last wall standing for the bulls in Bank Nifty futures for this series, because this is the only buying tail which we have. Below this are the lows of the series. So that is the reason you can see how today's lows were right there. Just like Nifty, it was opposite. Nifty, we got into Friday selling tail where we stalled. In Bank Nifty, we probe lower, but we have stalled in a previous buying tail. So what we need to see is a sync in both Nifty as well as Bank Nifty. If they get into sync, that is the day where you can expect a bigger range, because both of them are in sync and you can get a bigger move, whether it is to the upside or to the downside. But when both of them are giving you opposite direction, you know that there is a high chance of the extension not holding on. That is the reason what we saw in Nifty futures today was not an ideal neutral extreme profile, because Bank Nifty was having a initiative selling tail. So you cannot uh, continue to rise if someone is pulling you down. So that is what happened today, and we could not take this selling tail out, and we have formed a narrow range normal day Gaussian curve. So this sets up nicely for the coming sessions. So we will have to use this value as a reference and this POC as the higher level. If we stay above this value and take off this POC, then we're looking for a test of this selling tail. And then just like what we did in this value, if you get into this 4-day composite, you have a good 80 chance of the 80% rule playing out in this composite. I think 55755 is this low. We have the POC at 55840, and then we have the VWAP, and then this value area high at 56,090 levels, I think. So that'll be a very good setup to trade if and when we get there for this remaining sessions of this expiry. So this is as far as the Bank Nifty futures is concerned, let's now just have a quick look at the bank nifty order flow of today. So the bank nifty order flow, what has it done today at the morning at the open? It has rejected just below previous day's VWAP. The move higher, although it made marginal new lows, we did not get any supply at the open. We probed higher, but we saw an RS and big seller at the top. After which we got this IS30, which is not yet activated because we have not got any volume below this 55171. So when you get an IS30, we want to see volumes below the lows of this IS30. Only then we look to take a short side trade with a stop loss at the IS30I or a filter, which could be this POC. And because this POC, RS POC is coming right at the important reference, this reference of 55447 was there even in our daily report where we put up the business areas. So when you're getting a sell side reference there and a break of VWAP, you know that you're looking for more downside. But where did we stall? 55185 is that buying tail which we saw in the market profile chart. So that is holding for now. And that is the last wall standing for the bulls for this series. So if we get acceptance here, or if we get a IS3 below this 55171, then you can look for new lows for the series going forward. And what has it done? This IB30 is come, but this is a very low volume IB30 with a very small range. So you will not be very confident of these kind of IBs. So you need to know, and especially when the IB high is showing you zero on the buy side. IB means initiative buying. So you need to see more volumes on the buy side right through the candle, especially at the top. Only then you can expect the IB bar to hold and give you the higher targets. So it is not at all a surprise that it is not held, and we have closed as a normal day today. And the POC is right around that monthly POC of 55355, which is also the 2025 POC. So same thing, we will need to look out for IB signals or IS signals. And on 30 minutes, if you're getting them and those get activated, you can expect a good move in that direction. And accordingly, you can set yourself up for trades. So this is how we are placed. The next chart you have on screen is the gamma density chart. What is the gamma density chart? We have discussed in our sessions previously, and we have also explained how to make use of this. So we have two new tools which we have added, gamma density and the gamma exposure. So I'll just have a quick look of what both are telling us and what can we expect. So we saw we Shai had shared the gamma density and the gamma exposure charts of the last settlement, and you could see how both of them were the gamma in the gamma density chart. This orange, this yellow line and this orange line were pointed to 25100, and both of them were very steep curves. So what is that is the reason we could expect that the expiry on that day was more likely to be near 25100, which eventually happened. 25083 was, I think, was the close. So but what is the gamma density chart showing to us? So here you can see this peak is near this level, which is 25950, which is very close to the weekly POC which we have in spot, and this is near the 25,000 mark. So as of now, these are at two different places, and you can see this is the lower range 24,800 and 25,100 is the upper range. So if you are a strangle seller, you can take these two as your references, and you will have to see that these two are inside this, and this sigma is not changed. So that is how you can see how the range for the expiry for now is between these two levels. And when will it change? When you see a change in this, when either you can see how in the morning this curve was near the 25,000 mark, and before that previous close, you can see how this was peaking here at 24,950. at the open, and how this was also forming a nice Gaussian curve. So both are pointing towards this 25,000 level. But today, now 24,950 level. But the close is not as symmetric as it was. So that is what we will have to look for. If on the expiry day, the settlement day, you are getting this, even this yellow line as a bigger tail, which has a bigger tail, like it looks like this it's as steep as this, then you can tell that it is more likely that the expiry will be at this level. But this is more evenly balanced, so that is why this is still not very clear. So we take this as our reference, and these would be our extended references on the either side. So which is the next chart which we are looking at is the gamma exposure. So gamma exposure tells you whether it is a long gamma zone or a short gamma zone, because we have the green and the red. I'll just so when the green is over the red, it is telling you it's a long gamma market. When the red is above the green, it is a short gamma market. So you can see how for now it is, and both of them are pointing to 25,000. So right now our gamma 0 is at 25,000, and that will be our reference for the day tomorrow and day after. And we will see if this changes. If this gets above this, then you know it's a short gamma market. When the green is above this, you know it's a long gamma market. So what do you do when it's a long gamma market? How do you trade them? We also have a specific tool for that. And what is that tool? Order flow. Yes, order flow. We look for IBs and IB signals in the option which we want to trade on the long side. And what is the other chart which we have? It is this volume X. So what you have on screen right now is the Nifty volume X chart. And how do we make use of it? We have even discussed about this, that these are the blue volumes are the call volumes, and the red, the pink are the put volumes. So whenever there is a surge in the call volumes, you need to look for IB signals in the C's, call options. Or if you want to short puts, then you need to you need to look for IS signal in the puts. And when there is a crossover, there is a chance that the uh, auction is changing character. So you need to look for the other side. But then again, when you have a crossover here, you know that you need to look for long side trades. So make sure you're using this volume X chart when and uh, looking at them when you're trading, especially the settlement day. So when you're looking at option writers being hit, you will definitely see those volumes swiping higher. And then when you're seeing this volumes swiping higher and the distance between the call and the put volumes increasing, what you need to do, you need to just open up an uh, option call chart, look for IB signals in that and trade those IB signals, IB3s. And if you're looking for a longer term bias, then look at the 30-minute order flow also, and then see if they have left IB30s. So they become your bigger swing references to hold the calls. So you can keep on entering, re-entering, booking profit in calls as long as the IB30 reference is holding. So make sure this is one very important tool which you will have to keep open on the settlement day. So the gamma density and the gamma exposure will tell you what the range for the day is, and the option volume X will give you the sign right at when the information is changing in favor of long options or long calls or long puts. So these are the tools which you have to make sure that you're using, and when you use them, you cut out lot of noise and you will make extra uh, prevention to your trades. So there is a more chance of the trades being a winner if these are the things which are followed. These tools are taken into consideration. And following the spectrum, you know that the range of the day is around that. So accordingly, you can also look at your targets and book them. So that is it for today, guys. I'll quickly take on any questions if we have. Yes, order flow. I think most of the questions has 30-minute caught. You mean to ask the 10 bar caught? It was in green. The 10 bar caught was 4849 in the August. In the September also it was slightly green, 42. So asymmetrical is a pinned market. If the settlement is get very likely to get pinned to one level, then you will find those huge vertical swipes which we saw in the. I'll just quickly come on to the. Okay, we have the gamma exposure in both. So just like how you have this orange line, the density as your steep Gaussian curve, if even this convexity is also giving you a similar kind of a steep one, then it will tell you that it is pinned to that. And that is why that is the kind of chart we had at 25,100 on Thursday, the last settlement. In fact, they are still up on Twitter. I think you can just go back there and you can check those density charts and you can compare them with this, and it'll be very clear. So when you have this cheap kind of a zone, even in convexity, and both are pointing to the same level, it is very likely that the expiry is there. If that what that means is all the option inventory, the big players are playing for a close near that level. So in case there are any other queries, you can just put them on, guys, before we can sign up for the evening. So thank you, guys. That is it from me for today. Let's see how this August series ends and hope we can get a good expiry going forward. We also have the Bappa day in between. So let's see if we have some kind of an effect, which generally the market has. The festive season does have an effect on the market, but we will not just go by the seasonal thing, but we will also take in consideration the latest data if it is in favor of that what we are expecting, and only then we will look to trade in that direction. So in case you have any more queries, you can DM me on X. My Twitter ID is at Uttam Goel, and we will be happy to get back to your queries, or you can mail us at support@vtrender.com. Thank you for joining in, guys. Signing off for now, and let's have a great expiry.